So let's actually go to this idea of students being able to work together in classrooms, because I know from talking to people that when we think of active learning, often we think about small group learning experiences, but there are challenges to implementing that in classes with a lot of students. Could you tell us about those challenges and what you do to try to mitigate them? Or
for groups, for us it's difficult to work on groups on large lectures. That's why we have the labs. But we can work with all of them. For example, when we solve problems, we just give a problem for the whole students, and they all have to interact. That's how we did it. Like I don't know if it's, but it was much more difficult to divide them in groups and work on groups. So that's why we have the labs.
May I ask how that works out? Do you like have 2 days of lecture and then a third day of the lab, or?
No, like we have in same time. Like once a week we have a lab,
Okay.
and 3 hours of lab, and we have the 3 lectures on the same week.
Okay.
And we have different projects on the lab. They can work on teams and they can have that interaction. But on the large lectures, we didn't. It was difficult for us to divide them and to work on small projects. So when we solve a problem, we solve for everybody.
so I am privy to some special information. And first of all is that we are going to have a personnel change up here soon because scheduling. But the second is that Melissa was telling me on the way in about the grab bag thing that they're doing in her class. I thought it was really interesting. So before she takes her leave of us, would you like to tell us about that?
Absolutely. So we have tried it as an experiment in the past on a smaller scale, and this spring is the first term where we made it the bulk of the class. We have many activities that are experience activities that happen outside of classroom time. For example, a career fair, or doing a mock interview, or meeting a professor for coffee, things that we really can't schedule for all 700 students. So what we did was we made basically a map with all the options for the term. We have levels, which the students were able to name the levels. Most of them ended up naming them Kardashian sisters, like there's the Kendall and the Chloe and the Kim. And they pick, right? Active learning, okay? Whether or not you agree with the result, it's a result, and that's what matters.
That's right.
So they named the levels. The Kims were worth 30, the Chloes were 20, the Kendalls were 10. They have to achieve a certain amount of points, all right? So they have 130 points, and throughout the semester, they're gonna look at that plan and decide how they're gonna get there. Are they gonna do 13 10-point activities? Are they gonna do one 70-point activity? They decide. So what we did at the beginning of the term on the first day, we gave them the blank map. We said, here are your options. You're gonna initial next to your plan, the ones you're gonna do. You're gonna sign it, and you're gonna turn it into us hard copy and a copy on Canvas, so we will never lose it. It is their job now to achieve that number of points. And it's capped. So we have what we've found, which is a great problem. Students are like, can I do more? I've already hit 130, but I just wanna keep going. And I got done too soon. And we're like, you can keep going, you just won't get credit for it for the class. But please keep going. So we have really flipped the classroom. I don't know if I'm using this in the technically, academically right term, but we've put the pressure on them to think about and commit to what they want to do and what grade they want to receive. So students can also opt to say, I don't want to get 130, I just want a D because D means diploma and it's me. It's like, I'm going to be out of here. That's fine, right? They'll do what they want to do, and that's the case with all students. It's just now we're asking, like, what do you want to do? And so we provide the options, which does require very intense planning before the semester starts. And that's one thing, we were feeling that crunch to get that map together. Now that it's done and we have all the copies and it's past midterms, we can say, this is going really well, because students are owning up to it. And if they're not, we can pull them in at mid-semester and say, you're not even close to meeting the goals of your plan. Let's talk about it. So we have turned that onto them. Now they still have quizzes that are on Canvas, and Canvas grades quizzes itself. I don't know how familiar all of you are with Canvas, but it is an amazing tool. I think all of us could talk about it for days. Canvas grades quizzes for itself, so at the end of the semester, students will write a reflection on their grab bag experience. And they will write, what did I do? Why did I have to do it? And what am I gonna do now? We're already seeing some of the reflections rolling in, and we've had such a positive response because students are thinking about their plan for next term too. So it's not just going to end here. They're saying, I went to career fair and I was really scared. I never would have gone otherwise, but this class basically made me go, or I chose to go, and I can't wait till next term. I'm going to do better next time. And we're not used to hearing that. We're used to hearing, I'm done with it, thanks. Maybe not even thanks, honestly. I'm done with it. So now we're seeing that positive.
That's one of the things I've really liked and didn't expect to discover about active learning is how accommodating it can be for different types of students with different goals and different other things. That the ones who are more inclined to push themselves and want to go beyond their 130 points or whatever, there's space and time for them to do that. We don't have to slow the class down for the ones who want to charge ahead, but we're still able to accommodate the students who are less motivated or less prepared.
Yep, absolutely.
I got a question. I've heard the word active learning a lot in the past 15 minutes. And just to make sure everybody's on the same page, and since we have 4 different disciplines up there anyway, when all of you say active learning, do you all mean the same thing? What is a good functional definition for what is active learning?
I would say it's the student doing something that is mentally engaging, which is a different kind from listening to someone else talk, but they are actually involved in thinking through
And
things.
specifically in the classroom to be doing that. Because we hope
If it's
they're engaged.
active learning in the classroom, yes.
Yeah.
That's the same definition we operate with, is really that forcing, whatever you want to call it, the student to acknowledge the learning process rather than us just distributing it and hoping they receive it. They're doing it. And with the grab bag, they're even planning it for themselves.
And in the discipline of English, it kind of lends itself to that because they're already expected to do their reading outside of class and to write their papers outside of class. So we know they're doing some work, but now we're making them accountable for it so that we have activities where they can work together collaboratively to demonstrate that they can do something with this material that they were assigned to review, rather than, as you say, just sitting there listening to us, talk about all the wonderful things we know about Ernest Hemingway or whomever.
Yeah, for me, it's interaction and also active interaction. Like like they have to solve with us the problems, and they have to interact with us when we have topics. So that's what I understand.
Yeah, and that's a key term, problem solving, because I think that's probably something we all do. We formulate a problem and they work together to solve it in class.
Yeah, although it's not always problem solving to be active, but that's a key component.
That's a component.
Missouri talked about assimilation, about exposure versus assimilation. Exposure is when you're listening or reading about something. Assimilation is when you're actually trying to do something with it. And that's what the active component really tries to strive to do from my standpoint.
If we can know example from each discipline about the in-class active learning activity you are doing within the class itself, during the class time.
I'll start in my end, I guess. So very commonly what I will do is have an activity on learning catalytics that they will log into with their phone or their tablet or computer. And the types of questions I ask vary, depends on the exact type of activity I'm going to do. Very commonly it starts off with something connected to the material that I expect them to do, draw a concept map or draw a life cycle for type of plants, draw from memory the best they can that life cycle, or describe some particular group of organisms. So it's very open type activity. And then time for them to discuss with each other about this. It'll be a series of these. And then later, usually in the same class period, but sometimes in a different class period, some gradable questions, some multiple choice or calculation or select all that apply type questions that the system can actually grade, that they go in and do on learning catalytics on their own, and then repeat it again where they get to talk to each other.
Yeah, one of the first things I realized when I started this was that if I'm going to be teaching them in a different way, I have to test them in a different way. And there was a lot of pressure in our department anyway to include more of a writing component. So what I did was to use the Canvas to distribute prompts about their reading that they work on collaboratively, so they can see those in advance. They come into class, they work on them, and what I've told them is that the same prompts that they're working on in class are going to be from the pool I choose for their exam questions. So in essence, they're spending the whole semester studying for their exam, and they have the questions already.
Mm-hmm. It's always nice to give questions in advance. That helps. We learned about think, pair, share. And we use that very frequently in a lot of our classes. So at the beginning of class, we will offer out 2 discussion questions and have students spend a few minutes and reflect on what they think the answer is. Then we'll go into maybe up to 5 or 10 minutes of lecture material. And it's not really lecture, it's more of questioning, which is, again, a shift for me. You can't read off the PowerPoint slides. You have to walk around the class and have students talk about what they wrote down if they're willing. Depending on the class, at that point discussion will take off and students will start asking each other questions. Now some classes, after they thought for themselves, if they don't want to talk about it, then we'll have them pair up and see if they got the same or similar answers to their partner. And if so, could they come to an agreement on one ultimate answer? And if they're still not talking or willing to share at that point, we have these giant sticky Post-it notes. You might be familiar. You could stick them all around the walls, give every pair a marker, and have them write up the answer that they think the rest of the class would pick. And then I will walk around and lead them through, basically read the Post-it, see if there is something unanimous or showing up as the most common answer. And a lot of times we can use that to check for understanding for whatever the material is. So Think, Pair, Share works for a lot of different things. In our case, we use it for, are you comfortable with your interviewing skills, or do you have a resume, or do you think a LinkedIn profile is important? We have a lot of questions like that will get students, they're more willing sometimes to talk to themselves and then write it down for me to read, rather than just talking out loud to a class of 200 people.
For us, for example, when we ask them to design, for example, a gearbox or a mechanical system, we expect them, and they do have access to the material, we expect them to tell us or to discuss with us about the formula they want to use, and also the method, and or whatever, like if there are different solutions or different design for the same problems. And we expect like an active interaction in terms of the equations that they are using, and also the solving of these equations. And they can do that one on the web as well as on, like on Canvas, like we mentioned, that's active. And also we're using some video for, maybe explaining sometimes the problems and the solving of the problems.